The frigid breath of the Alaskan wilderness bit deep, a cruel, relentless sculptor of ice and solitude. Yet, what Elias Thorne stumbled upon defied every law of nature he knew, every scientific principle he had ever held sacred. It lay nestled within a glacial crevice, a colossal, ape-like form, perfectly preserved in a crystalline shroud of ancient ice. Its sheer scale was staggering, easily 12 feet tall even in its hunched, frozen posture, with limbs thick as mighty tree trunks and a head that spoke of primal intelligence. The fur, a dense dark mahogany, seemed to ripple beneath the transparent prison, hinting at incredible power. This wasn't a bear, nor any known primate. This was something else entirely, a creature of myth made terrifyingly, undeniably real. Its features, broad and powerful, held an eerie stillness, a silent testament to an unknown eon of frozen slumber. The air around it hummed with an unnatural chill, a stillness that seemed to absorb all sound, leaving only the frantic thumping of Elias's own heart. Before we delve deeper into this incredible tale, one that will challenge everything you think you know about our world, please consider subscribing to our channel. Join our community of explorers and truth seekers for more astonishing, inexplicable stories like this one. Your support helps us bring these extraordinary narratives to light. Elias Thorne was a man forged in the crucible of loss and silence. His face, weathered by countless seasons spent battling the elements, bore the deep lines of a life lived on the edge of civilization. A reclusive but undeniably skilled wildlife photographer, his lens had captured the fleeting majesty of jaguars in the Amazon, the ghost-like movements of snow leopards in the Himalayas, and the stoic grandeur of polar bears in the Arctic. But it was in Alaska, specifically the untouched, unforgiving stretches of its interior, that he sought more than just photographs. He chased an elusive peace, a balm for the unhealed wound of a past tragedy that had stolen his family and shattered his world. Solitude was his companion. The stark beauty of the wild is only solace, and the pursuit of rare, uncaptured moments his singular obsession. He lived off the land, his movements as fluid and silent as the animals he tracked, his mind a steel trap absorbing every nuance of the environment. His trusty expedition camera, a marvel of rugged engineering, hung heavy around his neck, a constant extension of his will to observe, to document. His survivalist skills, honed over decades, were second nature, allowing him to navigate terrain that would claim lesser men. He craved the unseen, the undiscovered, always pushing deeper, further, beyond the maps, beyond human knowledge. It was this relentless drive that had led him here, to this impossible, breathtaking discovery. He had been tracking an elusive pack of white wolves, their phantom-like presence drawing him further into a seldom visited glacier field, a labyrinth of ice caves and ancient groaning rivers of frozen water. The anomaly had presented itself subtly at first, an unusual resonance in the ice, a strange energy signature picked up by a portable sensor he always carried, designed to detect unique geological formations. Following the faint reading, he'd navigated treacherous blue ice tunnels, rappelled down sheer, glittering walls, and finally, there it was. Not a geological wonder, but a biological one. An unnaturally preserved giant humanoid figure, encased in a perfectly clear, ancient block of ice. It sat in a fetal position, as if sleeping, its massive hands clasped protectively over its chest. This was no ordinary find. This was far from any known scientific expedition, light years from any human settlement. The nearest outpost was weeks away by snowmobile, in perfect conditions, months on foot. The sheer impossibility of the find, Its blatant disregard for all established natural history immediately sparked a deep, almost painful scientific curiosity within Elias, warring with a primal, instinctual awe. His breath hitched in his throat, a cloud of vapor dissolving into the frigid air around him. This wasn't just a photograph. This was a paradigm shift. This was a secret the Earth had held for millennia, and he, Elias Thorne, was now its sole witness. The creature's eyes, though closed, seemed to hold untold stories, ancient wisdom etched into their very form. He approached cautiously, his high-powered headlamp cutting through the gloom, illuminating every minute detail of the colossal being. His gloved hand reached out, brushing the impossibly cold surface of the ice, a futile attempt to comprehend its scale, its reality. Then it happened. A subtle, almost imperceptible fog. A wisp of vapor, delicate as a whispered secret, drifted from the creature's nostrils, swirling briefly in the frigid air before dissipating. Elias froze, every nerve ending screaming. He blinked, shaking his head, convinced the extreme cold and the sheer magnitude of the discovery were playing tricks on his mind. It couldn't be. It was impossible. His mind raced, grasping for rational explanations. Perhaps it was lingering condensation from the glacier, a trick of the light, an illusion born of the extreme temperature difference. He held his breath, straining his eyes, his heart hammering against his ribs. He watched, absolutely still for what felt like an eternity. And then, there it was again. Another faint plume, slightly more distinct this time, blossoming from the frozen nostrils. It was not his imagination. It was real. The fog of breath. A sign of life. The realization hit him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. This wasn't merely a perfectly preserved specimen. It was a living, breathing being, held in a state of suspended animation within its icy tomb. The observation, terrifying and miraculous all at once, created a profound and unsettling sense of wonder, a chilling dread interwoven with an intoxicating disbelief. The wilderness, he knew, held many secrets. But this transcended all understanding. What had he truly found in the heart of this frozen, silent world? And what would happen next? The question hung heavy in the air, a silent promise of unimaginable events yet to unfold. The breath in the freezing air, almost imperceptible at first, was no trick of the light, no phantom of Elias's fatigued mind. It was real, a nascent plume of vapor rising from the massive frozen snout, and it shattered his world. A deep, unsettling tremor passed through him, a jolt that went straight to his core. This wasn't just a dead relic. It was something else entirely. Something alive, impossible, and profoundly vulnerable. Torn between the overwhelming urge to alert the nearest scientific outpost, to shatter the world with this unprecedented discovery, and a burgeoning, almost paternal instinct to shield this being, Elias made a silent, momentous decision. He would observe. He would protect. From that moment, the pristine Alaskan wilderness transformed from a place of solace into a clandestine laboratory, a silent vigil. He retreated a safe distance, establishing a secluded encampment nestled beneath towering, snow-laden spruce trees, their branches offering a natural canopy against the relentless cold and the prying eyes of any stray aircraft. His camp was rudimentary but efficient, designed for long-term, solitary living. A robust, insulated tent, a portable stove, and an array of sophisticated photographic and monitoring equipment he usually reserved for tracking elusive apex predators. He meticulously positioned motion-activated cameras and thermal sensors, creating a web of silent surveillance around the colossal form encased in ice, a silent guardian in the vast, indifferent landscape. Days blurred into a continuous cycle of observation, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a growing sense of responsibility. Elias, ever the pragmatist, initially sought logical explanations for the creature's apparent vitality. Perhaps residual warmth from geothermal vents beneath the ice, an unusual atmospheric anomaly. Each theory, however, crumbled under the weight of his increasingly detailed observations. The breathing, initially subtle, began to exhibit more complex patterns. Shallow, rhythmic inhales and exhales that occasionally deepened, almost like a sigh. Through the crystalline prism, he could discern subtle shifts in the creature's facial expression, a tightening around the eyes, a slight clenching of the jaw. These were not random muscle contractions. They felt deliberate, almost responsive. Was it merely an echo of residual neural activity, or was there an underlying consciousness stirring within the frozen behemoth? His professional training as a wildlife photographer kicked in, urging him to document every minute detail. He spent hours, often battling whiteout conditions and numbing cold, sketching the creature's massive physique, the texture of its matted fur, the intricate details of its powerful hands, even the subtle contours of its closed eyelids. He began to perceive what he initially dismissed as optical illusions, fleeting, almost imperceptible movements within the ice, a tremor in a shoulder, a twitch of a finger. It was as if the creature was struggling against its icy tomb, a captive dream, or perhaps simply a profound struggle for existence. He found himself whispering to it, soft, reassuring words lost to the wind. Unsure why, he felt compelled to do so. This was no mere animal. The sheer scale, the almost human-like aspect of its face, even in its frozen repose, hinted at something far grander, far more profound. Beyond the immediate vicinity of the creature, Elias meticulously documented the surrounding environment. He discovered a network of ancient cave systems, their entrances partially obscured by snow and ice, hinting at a long, undisturbed sanctuary. These were not the typical rock shelters found in the region. They bore an inexplicable aura of age, almost a primordial silence. Inside, the air was still and cold, yet strangely fresh, carrying an earthy scent he couldn't quite place. He found no evidence of modern human activity, no signs of mining or exploration. This suggested the creature hadn't simply wandered into the ice recently. It had likely been here for a very, very long time, perhaps for centuries, a living fossil preserved by an unknown force. His explorations also yielded unusual plant life, hardy, bioluminescent fungi clinging to cave walls, and peculiar, broad-leafed flora thriving in sheltered pockets, unlike anything cataloged in regional botanical surveys. More unsettling were the animal tracks he occasionally found etched into hardened snow. Tracks too large for any known Alaskan bear, too heavy for a moose, yet unequivocally bipedal in certain stretches. These were not the tracks of the frozen giant, but of something else, something equally massive, perhaps its kin or an entirely different species altogether. The wilderness around the creature was not merely wild, it was ancient, a place where the familiar rules of biology seemed to bend and sometimes break. This escalating mystery fueled Elias's scientific curiosity, but it also ignited an intense internal conflict. The seasoned pragmatist, the cool observer, found himself battling a growing sense of ethical responsibility, bordering on terror. What was this creature? A missing link? A legend made flesh? A being from an untold epoch? The implications were staggering, capable of rewriting entire chapters of natural history. But what would happen if the world knew? He envisioned the inevitable onslaught. Scientists vying for samples, governments clamoring for control, corporations seeking exploitation, the media turning it into a sensational spectacle. The creature, already vulnerable, would become a commodity, a captive, its profound dignity stripped away. His mind replayed images of scientific expeditions, of specimens preserved in formaldehyde, of creatures poked and prodded in sterile labs. He thought of the public's insatiable hunger for the extraordinary and the potential for cruelty that often accompanied it. A cold dread settled in his stomach. This being, frozen, seemingly dormant, held an undeniable presence, a quiet power that commanded respect. He felt an almost primal urge to protect it, to shield it from the inevitable chaos its revelation would unleash. His isolation, once a chosen solitude, now felt like a burden, a heavy secret. The pristine, frozen landscape, once his refuge, had become a crucible for a profound moral dilemma, forcing him to grapple with the potential consequences of his discovery and the immense weight of the unknown. He knew, with chilling certainty, that this was a secret that could either save or doom them both. The subtle shifts Elias had observed in the creature's facial expressions and body language, even through the dense ice, suddenly took on a new, urgent significance. A profound and inexplicable change was occurring in the Alaskan weather, a phenomenon Elias, with all his years of experience in the wilderness, could not easily rationalize. The crisp, biting air that had held the landscape in an iron grip for weeks began to soften, hinting at an early, almost unnatural thaw. It wasn't a dramatic rise in temperature, but a persistent, almost imperceptible warmth that started to permeate the frigid enclosure around the colossal being. Elias watched, captivated, as small rivulets of water, like veins on a living organism, began to trace erratic paths down the icy cocoon. He hypothesized, with a mixture of awe and trepidation, that the creature's own immense internal biology, perhaps a deeply ingrained, primal metabolic shift, might be subtly radiating heat, influencing the melting process from within. This wasn't merely a change in the external environment. It felt like an intrinsic awakening, a silent declaration that the long slumber was nearing its end. As the ice, stubbornly at first, then with increasing readiness released its grip, more intricate details of the creature's form emerged. The fur, which had appeared uniformly dark and matted under the thick layer of ice, now revealed a breathtaking tapestry of deep browns, auburns, and hints of charcoal, shimmering subtly in the filtered light. It was impossibly thick, clearly evolved to withstand unimaginable cold, yet possessed a softness Elias longed to touch, though he dared not. Beneath the receding ice, the powerful musculature of the creature became starkly visible. Every sinew, every contour spoke of immense, untamed strength, of a being perfectly adapted to its harsh environment. Its shoulders were broad, its arms thick and long, ending in what appeared to be surprisingly dexterous, albeit enormous hands. The sheer raw power suggested by its physique was almost overwhelming, a living testament to a species honed by millennia of natural selection. But it was the face that truly held Elias spellbound. As the ice relinquished its hold around the creature's head, revealing more of its features, Elias found himself staring into eyes that, even in their frozen, partly obscured state, seemed to hold an unimaginable depth. They were not merely animalistic. There was an intelligence, an ancient, knowing quality that transcended anything Elias had ever encountered in the wild. The brow was heavy, the jawline formidable, yet there was a serene, almost melancholic cast to its features that belied any simple classification as a brute beast. It was a face that had witnessed epochs, endured silence, and dreamed profound, ageless dreams. The subtle fog of breath that had once been a flicker of doubt, a trick of light and cold air, now became undeniably consistent. There was no mistaking it. A regular plume of warm vapor, visible against the icy backdrop, rose and fell from its massive nostrils, marking the slow, deliberate rhythm of its respiration. The chest, which had seemed utterly rigid, began to rise and fall with a shallow yet powerful movement. Each inhalation was a soft, drawing sound that resonated in the silent wilderness. Each exhalation a long, gentle sigh that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Elias could no longer dismiss or rationalize this away. The creature was unequivocally alive, existing in a profound state of extreme hibernation, an existence held precariously between life and suspended animation. The proof was right there, a living, breathing enigma, thawing before his very eyes. A new, profound drive seized Elias. The pure scientific curiosity that had initially fueled his vigil now mingled with something far more primal, an innate human need to connect, to understand, to perhaps even communicate. He found himself, almost without conscious thought, attempting rudimentary communication. He would vocalize soft, soothing sounds, low murmurs that echoed the gentle cadence of the melting ice. He hummed simple melodies, the kind he used to hum to himself during long, lonely nights camping. He watched intently for any reaction, any flicker of recognition, any subtle shift in the creature's glacial composure. One afternoon, as he spoke softly, describing the world outside its icy prison, the creature's right eyelid, still mostly encased, seemed to quiver, a minute twitch that sent a jolt through Elias. Then, a slow, almost imperceptible rotation of its head, just a fraction of an inch, focused its still frozen gaze in his direction. There was no aggression, no fear, just a slow, deliberate acknowledgement. Elias felt a profound sense of validation, a confirmation that his presence was not unnoticed, that his voice, however faint against the vastness of its slumber, was being registered. It wasn't an answer, not in any conventional sense, but it was a response, a monumental sign that the chasm between them might not be as impassable as he had once thought. The creature was listening. It was aware. And Elias, armed with this fragile hope, felt his heart swell with an unprecedented blend of terror and elation. He was no longer just an observer. He was a participant in an awakening that promised to redefine everything he thought he knew about life itself. The silent communion had begun, paving the way for the impossible to become real. Then, one evening, as the twilight painted the Alaskan sky in hues of deep violet and fading orange, a sound reverberated across the tundra that seized Elias's breath. It was a low, resonant thrum, a guttural rumble that seemed to emanate not just from the creature, but from the very core of the earth itself. The sound deepened, growing in intensity, a primordial awakening shaking the stillness of the Arctic air. Elias, who had been meticulously adjusting a time-lapse camera, froze, his heart pounding against his ribs. The rumble culminated in a long, drawn-out sigh, and then, slowly, agonizingly slowly, the creature's colossal eyelids began to part. The ice around its eyes, already thinned by the thaw and touched by Elias's persistent attention, cracked and fractured with soft, almost musical sounds. Underneath, eyes of an unimaginable depth, vast and ancient, slowly revealed themselves. They were not the eyes of a beast, nor were they entirely human. They held the deep, knowing intelligence of an ancient forest, the profound sadness of 1,000 winters, and a weary wisdom that transcended anything Elias had ever witnessed. They were amber in color, catching the last vestiges of the fading light, swirling with flecks of gold and moss green. For a long, suspended moment, those eyes fixed upon Elias, holding him utterly captive. It was a gaze that spoke not of hunger or aggression, but of profound understanding, of a shared destiny perhaps, or merely a recognition of his unwavering presence. The sheer weight of that gaze pressed down on him, stripping away all pretense, all scientific detachment, leaving only a raw, vulnerable human being standing before an impossible miracle. The creature, now partially free from its icy cocoon, moved its head with a slow, deliberate grace, a subtle shift of immense muscle and bone. Its gaze never left Elias. There was no sudden lurch, no thrashing, no violent break from its long slumber. Only an unnerving calm, a quiet assessment that felt more intelligent, more perceptive than any human evaluation. Elias stood motionless, barely daring to breathe, every fiber of his being tuned to the colossal being before him. He expected a roar, a sudden movement, perhaps even an attack. Instead, there was only that steady, unwavering observation. The creature seemed to be studying him, taking in every detail of his form, his equipment, sensing his intentions. In that suspended silence, a strange connection began to forge itself, an unspoken understanding passing between an ancient, awakening being and the lone human who had witnessed its return. To Elias's astonishment, the initial terror that had gripped him began to recede, replaced by a profound sense of wonder and a strange, almost paternal empathy. The creature was immense, powerful, undeniably alien. Yet in its intelligent gaze, Elias saw not a monster, but a survivor, a being of immense wisdom and perhaps immense loneliness. He felt an inexplicable pull, a deep, resonating chord struck within his own solitary soul. Taking a hesitant step forward, then another, he began to speak, his voice a hushed murmur against the vastness of the wilderness. He spoke not to a specimen, but to an equal, a living soul. "Hey there," he began, his voice hoarse. "You've been asleep for a long time, haven't you?" He felt foolish, yet compelled. "My name is Elias. I found you. You were frozen. I didn't mean to wake you, not like this." He gestured vaguely at the slowly melting ice around them. "But I couldn't just leave you there. You were breathing." He continued to talk, sharing fragments of his own story, his life, his journey into this remote wilderness. He spoke of the mountains, the wind, the quiet beauty he sought in the wild. He spoke of his intent to help, to understand, to protect this unexpected miracle. His words were a stream of consciousness, an offering, a plea for understanding. He explained that he meant no harm, that he was alone, just like it seemed to be. As he spoke, he cautiously moved closer, his eyes scanning the creature's immense form. The ice had receded further, revealing more of its leathery skin, its dense, dark fur, and the powerful musculature rippling beneath. That's when he noticed them. Ancient scars etched deep into the creature's hide. Some were long, jagged lines, others were circular depressions, like the remnants of old wounds from a forgotten battle. There were too many to count, and they told a silent, harrowing story of past struggles, of encounters with dangers far beyond human comprehension. These were not recent injuries. They were healed, aged, faded, yet undeniably present. A wave of profound empathy washed over Elias. He saw not a pristine, untouched enigma, but a scarred veteran, a being that had endured, fought, and survived against unimaginable odds. This creature, this Bigfoot, was not merely a biological anomaly. It was a testament to resilience, a living relic carrying the weight of ancient history on its massive frame. The scars deepened his connection, transforming the scientific marvel into a fellow survivor. Elias no longer saw a monster or a mere animal. He saw a being with a profound story, a story written in its eyes and etched upon its very skin. He reached out a trembling hand, not to touch, but in a gesture of profound respect and shared vulnerability. He was no longer afraid. The world had just grown immeasurably larger, and he was ready to embrace its impossible truths. The moment of full emergence from the ice was not sudden, but a gradual, majestic unfolding. Over the next few days, the remaining icy shell surrounding the colossal creature finally yielded. The last fragments, crystal clear and ancient, slid away, revealing the full magnificence of its form. It was truly immense, far larger than any known ape, easily twice the height of a man, with broad shoulders and limbs of incredible power. Yet, despite its gargantuan size, it moved with a fluidity and grace that defied its bulk. There was no awkwardness, no stiffness from its long slumber. Every fiber of its massive frame seemed to awaken, with a silent, inherent knowledge of its own capabilities. Elias, positioned at a respectful distance, watched in awe as the creature stretched, a slow, deliberate sequence of movements that rippled through its dense fur and powerful musculature. Its head tilted back, then slowly scanned the surrounding landscape, its ancient eyes absorbing every detail of the world it had re-entered. There was an unnerving calm in its demeanor, a quiet dignity that belied its wildness. It seemed to regard Elias not with aggression, nor even curiosity in the common sense, but with a deep, patient observation, as if cataloging his every nuance. Elias found himself mimicking some of its subtle head turns, a subconscious act of mirroring that seemed to be acknowledged by the creature with an almost imperceptible shift in its gaze. It was a silent, powerful presence, a being of immense wisdom that seemed to understand far more than it let on. Driven by an instinct to forge a connection, Elias approached cautiously, holding out a hand, palm open, in a universal gesture of peace. The creature watched, its eyes unwavering. He then gently placed a few pieces of dried fruit and some purified snowmelt water in a clean, flat stone he had prepared. He retreated slightly, giving it space. After a long moment of contemplation, the creature lowered its massive hand, its fingers surprisingly dexterous, and carefully picked up a piece of fruit. It brought it to its nostrils, inhaling deeply, then slowly, deliberately, placed it in its mouth. The act was performed with an almost ritualistic grace, a testament to its cautious acceptance. Elias felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was a critical first step. Over the ensuing days, a rudimentary form of communication began to blossom between them. Elias would use simple gestures, pointing to himself and saying, "Elias," then to the creature, waiting. He would point to the sky, the mountains, the river, naming them in soft tones. The creature, in turn, would respond with subtle movements of its head, deep, resonant hums that vibrated through the air, and even, at times, what seemed like deliberate mimicry of Elias's gestures. When Elias pointed to a distant peak, the creature would slowly raise its own hand, tracing the outline of the mountain against the sky. It never spoke in human words, but its understanding was palpable, its intelligence undeniable. There was a moment when Elias, frustrated by a tangled rope, let out a soft exclamation of annoyance. The creature responded with a low, empathetic rumble, then, with surprising gentleness, reached out a massive finger and untangled the knot with effortless precision. It was a clear demonstration of both intelligence and a desire to help. Through these nonverbal exchanges, and by observing the creature's interactions with its environment, Elias began to piece together a profound hypothesis regarding its origin. The creature moved through the ancient landscape with an intimate familiarity, navigating hidden paths, knowing instinctively where the purest water flowed and where unique bioluminescent mosses thrived deep within secluded cavern systems. When Elias showed it samples of these rare flora, the creature would gently touch them, its eyes conveying a deep reverence. It seemed to be an innate part of this land, a living embodiment of the wilderness itself. Its knowledge of the forest, the mountains, and the hidden waterways was encyclopedic, far beyond anything Elias had ever witnessed in any animal. He observed how local wildlife, the great bears and elusive wolves, gave it a wide berth, not out of fear, but a deep, ingrained respect. They seemed to acknowledge its ancient dominion, moving around it with a deference typically reserved for an apex predator. Yet there was no predatory intent from the creature. Instead, it seemed to cultivate a strange harmony around it, a sense of balance in the ecosystem. Elias began to theorize that this creature was not merely an unknown species. It was an ancient guardian, a sentinel of these forgotten lands, a last remnant of a species intertwined with the very fabric of this pristine wilderness. Its long hibernation was perhaps a survival mechanism, a way to endure epochs, waiting for the right moment to reawaken, a living relic from a time when the world was wilder and magic still walked the earth. It was a keeper of secrets, a silent witness to millennia of change, now stirring back to life. Elias, standing in its immense shadow, felt a profound responsibility settle upon him. This was not merely a scientific discovery. It was an encounter with a living legend, a being of immense wisdom and connection to the earth. He felt a deep, almost spiritual resonance with this creature, an understanding that transcended scientific classifications. He needed a name for it, one that honored its profound connection to the world, its ancient wisdom, and its role as a silent guardian. Looking at its powerful, grounded form, its eyes reflecting the deep green of the forest and the endless blue of the sky, Elias whispered a name into the crisp Alaskan air, a name that perfectly encapsulated its essence, its timelessness, and its intrinsic link to the planet itself: Terra, Latin for earth. The creature, as if understanding the weight and meaning of the chosen word, let out a low, resonant hum, a sound that vibrated through Elias's very bones, a silent acknowledgement of its new, yet ancient, identity. The bond between them, fragile yet undeniably powerful, had been forged. The silent communion, a fragile bridge built on shared presence and unspoken understanding, was about to be shattered. Elias, engrossed in the slow, monumental awakening of Terra, had allowed himself a moment of peace, a brief foray into the impossible, believing for a fleeting time that this remote Alaskan wilderness was their sanctuary alone. But the world, with its insatiable hunger for discovery and exploitation, always found a way to intrude. Unbeknownst to him, a shadow had been cast, not by the majestic peaks surrounding them, but by the insidious reach of human avarice. Far from the pristine quiet of Terra's thawing ice, a ruthless team led by a man named Kale had been steadily closing in. Kale was a name whispered with disdain and fear in the sparse outposts of civilization bordering the wild, a name synonymous with ruthless efficiency and utter disregard for anything but profit. His current venture, an elaborate and illicit expedition, was ostensibly for rare mineral prospecting, but Cale possessed an uncanny intuition for anomalies, a predator's instinct for weakness and opportunity. His sophisticated, if entirely illegal, scanning equipment had detected unusual energy signatures in this very region, spikes that defied natural explanation, whispers of untouched resources, perhaps even legendary creatures, had reached his ears, fueling his already ravenous ambition. For Cale, the Alaskan wilderness was not a place of wonder, but a vast, untapped vault waiting to be plundered. Every ancient tree, every hidden vein of ore, every unique species was merely a commodity, its value measured purely in dollars. Elias first noticed the signs subtly, almost imperceptibly, as if the wilderness itself was exhaling a sigh of distress. It began with an unnatural quietness among the smaller creatures. The normally chattering squirrels were silent. The distant calls of raptors ceased. Then came the physical evidence during one of his routine perimeter checks. A freshly broken branch, too clean to be natural, snapped with a peculiar weight that spoke of a human boot. Later, a faint whiff of wood smoke, not from his own careful fires, but one carrying the acrid scent of processed fuel, carried on a shifting breeze. He dismissed it at first, as any survivalist might, attributing it to a transient hunter or lost prospector. But the feeling of unease persisted, a disquieting whisper at the back of his mind. One morning, the undeniable evidence appeared. Near a shallow stream where he often refilled his water containers, Elias discovered a crushed energy bar wrapper, its neon plastic a glaring insult to the pristine environment. Its brand was commercial, not something a local trapper would typically carry. A few yards further, half buried in loose soil, lay a spent cartridge casing, gleaming brass, a common caliber but unmistakably modern. He picked it up, feeling the cold weight of it in his palm, a direct intrusion into his solitary vigil. His heart hammered against his ribs, not with fear, but with a surge of protective instinct. The sanctity of his discovery, the profound secret he shared with Tara, was no longer his to guard alone. Someone else knew, or was close to knowing. His priority shifted instantly, a rapid recalculation of risk and responsibility. The scientific observer, the curious scholar, receded, replaced by the fierce guardian. Tara, vast and vulnerable in its slow awakening, was now in danger. Elias knew men like Cale. He had encountered their type before, their cold calculating eyes mirroring the glint of their tools. Reporting the discovery, a course of action he had considered in moments of overwhelming doubt, was now out of the question. To do so would be to condemn Tara to a life of dissection, exploitation, or display, a fate far worse than the icy slumber from which it was emerging. No, Elias had a different, more urgent purpose now: concealment. He moved with a renewed sense of purpose, his years of survival training kicking in. His camp, always minimalist, became practically invisible. He meticulously covered his tracks, erased all signs of his presence, and employed every trick he knew to blend into the landscape. His immediate focus was on Tara. The creature's immense size made full concealment impossible, but he could create diversions, camouflaged barriers, anything to delay or misdirect. He worked with a feverish intensity, dragging fallen branches, arranging rocks, even digging shallow trenches in the thawing earth to create natural-looking obstacles. He spoke to Tara in low tones, explaining the imminent threat, the urgent need for discretion. He knew the creature might not understand his words, but perhaps it sensed the gravity in his voice, the sudden shift in his demeanor. Elias's protective instinct was a primal force. He envisioned Cale's team descending upon the site, armed with tranquilizer darts, nets, perhaps even more brutal means of capture. He imagined Terra, bewildered and powerful, falling victim to their technology and their greed. The thought sickened him. This magnificent being, a living testament to an ancient past, deserved respect, not exploitation. He had witnessed the quiet intelligence in its eyes, the profound weariness of its long slumber. He knew, with an absolute certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that Terra was not merely an animal to be hunted, but a sentient being whose existence demanded protection. Every discarded wrapper, every distant sound, every whisper of human presence in this sacred place solidified his resolve. Elias Thorne, the reclusive photographer, was now Terra's sole, desperate defender, ready to face whatever darkness the approaching humans brought with them. The peaceful dawn, once a symbol of hope, now heralded the arrival of a dangerous, unwelcome confrontation. The gnawing certainty of Cale's approach tightened its grip on Elias, a cold knot in his stomach that rivaled the Alaskan chill. He had done all he could to obscure their immediate presence, but the vastness of the wilderness offered little true sanctuary from determined pursuers. His finely tuned senses picked up faint, unnatural vibrations in the air, the distant hum of an ATV or perhaps a drone. They were closing in. He motioned for Terra to follow, a silent plea conveyed through urgent gestures and the intensity of his gaze. Terra, with an intelligence that constantly surprised Elias, seemed to grasp the urgency, its massive form moving with an unexpected fluidity and quietness over the uneven terrain. The chase began subtly, a game of calculated evasion. Elias led Terra through dense thickets of spruce and alder, their low-hanging branches providing a temporary canopy, breaking up their silhouettes against the stark, snow-dusted landscape. He guided them across frozen streams, scrambling over slick rocks, always looking for paths that would hinder human pursuit. Narrow ravines, treacherous ice formations, areas where the dense undergrowth would snag and slow Cale's motorized vehicles. His years spent navigating these wild lands, documenting every nuance of its geography, now became their greatest asset. He knew the hidden pathways, the barely discernible game trails, the places where the forest seemed to swallow sound and sight. Terra, despite its immense size, moved with an almost ethereal grace, its footfalls surprisingly soft on the packed snow and frozen earth. It mirrored Elias's movements, hunkering low when he did, weaving through trees with careful precision, its dark fur a natural camouflage against the deep shadows. There were moments when Elias glanced back, expecting to see exhaustion or confusion, but found only an unwavering focus in Terra's ancient eyes, a deep understanding that seemed to transcend their disparate species. It was then that he truly comprehended the depth of Terra's loyalty, a bond forged in shared vulnerability and mutual trust. Kyle's team, however, was relentless. Elias heard their shouts, the sharp crackle of their radios, growing steadily louder. They were spreading out, a human net tightening around them. He could picture Kyle, cold and calculating, orchestrating the hunt from a central command, his face probably a mask of grim determination. He cursed his own former naivety, his brief, almost foolish belief that such a profound secret could remain hidden indefinitely. Just as the pursuit threatened to overwhelm them, Terra began to subtly assist. They were crossing a wide, open expanse of frozen tundra, dangerously exposed. Behind them, Cale's ATVs roared into view, their headlights cutting through the dim light of the Alaskan afternoon. Elias, heart-pounding, urged Terra forward, but they were too slow. Suddenly, Terra stopped, letting out a low, rumbling growl. With an astonishing display of power, it tore a long, thick branch from a nearby ancient willow tree, nearly as thick as Elias's torso. With purposeful movements, it dragged the branch, carving deep furrows in the snow, and strategically placed it across a narrow, icy chasm, creating a temporary, impassable barrier for the vehicles. The maneuver bought them precious minutes, forcing Cale's team to dismount and navigate the obstacle on foot. Later, as they navigated a particularly dense patch of forest, Elias heard the unmistakable whir of a drone directly above. He knew they were utterly exposed from the air. Tara, sensing his distress, let out a piercing, almost human-like cry that seemed to echo through the trees. Immediately, a flock of thousands of migrating birds, startled by the sound, erupted from the treetops, forming a chaotic, swirling cloud that momentarily obscured their aerial view. Cale's drone, caught in the avian maelstrom, lost its signal, giving them another brief window of precious freedom. Tara's actions weren't accidental. They were deliberate, intelligent responses to their predicament, demonstrating an intimate, almost symbiotic connection with the natural world around them. The climax of this desperate chase unfolded as the setting sun cast long, purple shadows across the snow-covered peaks. Elias and Tara found themselves cornered, the sheer cliff face rising hundreds of feet behind them, an impassable natural barrier. Below them, a dizzying drop led into an ancient, hidden valley, shrouded in mist and mystery. Kyle's team, boots crunching on the frozen ground, emerged from the tree line, forming a semicircle. Their faces were grim, their weapons loaded with tranquilizer darts. Cale himself stepped forward, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Found you, big guy," he sneered, his voice echoing in the crisp air. "And your little friend, too. It's over." Cale raised his hand, preparing to give the capture order. The glint of rifle scopes caught the dying light. Elias locked eyes with Tara, a silent communication passing between them, a desperate understanding. He had anticipated this moment, planned for it with a chilling precision born of pure desperation. With a defiant roar, Elias pulled a small, carefully placed charge from his pack, a remnant of his survival gear, designed for controlled rock clearing. He had noticed the unstable overhang near the cliff edge earlier, a natural fault line. He activated the detonator, a barely audible click lost in the wind. A tremor ran through the ground, then another. Cale's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of dawning horror. The earth groaned. With a deafening roar, a cascade of snow and ice, followed by tons of rock, began to peel away from the cliff face, plummeting down into the chasm below. The controlled avalanche wasn't just a diversion, it was a desperate gamble, a chaotic wall between them and their pursuers, momentarily disabling Cale's team and buying them the precious seconds they needed to disappear. In the chaotic aftermath of the controlled avalanche, as loose snow and rock cascaded down the cliff face, Cale's team stumbled and cursed, their specialized equipment momentarily useless against the unpredictable forces of nature. The diversion was perfectly executed, buying precious seconds, an eternity in the midst of such peril. Elias, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, seized the opportunity. He gestured urgently to Tara, pointing towards the hidden entrance of the valley below. A dark, narrow fissure nestled amongst ancient pines that had been obscured by the recent snowfall until his careful planning revealed it. Tara, with an intelligence that defied explanation, understood. The massive creature moved with surprising speed and agility, its powerful limbs navigating the treacherous descent with a grace that belied its size. Elias followed, scrambling down the less precipitous path he had scouted days earlier, the echoes of Cale's furious shouts fading behind them. The air grew stiller, warmer, as they plunged deeper into the secluded sanctuary. The valley floor was a tapestry of ancient growth, untouched by human hands, its air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. A hidden spring bubbled forth, steaming gently in the crisp Alaskan air, nourishing a miniature ecosystem entirely its own. This was it. The place he had instinctively known existed, a haven where Tara could truly be free. Kyle, frustrated and his pride wounded, would attempt pursuit, but the chaotic avalanche had not only disoriented his team, but also triggered smaller, localized slides that effectively sealed off their direct path, at least temporarily. Elias had gambled everything on this one desperate maneuver, and for now, it had paid off. Kyle, nursing a bruised ego and perhaps a sprained ankle, would eventually retreat. His lust for capture thwarted, his dreams of exploitation shattered by a single, determined man and a being beyond his comprehension. He would vow revenge, Elias knew, but the vastness of Alaska and the intricate defenses of the valley would protect Tara from his avarice, at least for a very long time. Elias's actions had ensured not just Tara's momentary escape, but its enduring freedom. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Elias found himself integrating into the rhythm of the hidden valley. His initial role as protector gradually evolved into something deeper, more profound. He became Tara's silent companion, its chronicler, the sole human witness to a life that defied classification. The creature, in turn, accepted him with a quiet dignity, its ancient eyes reflecting a wisdom that seemed to stretch back through eons. Elias observed its behaviors, its interactions with the valley's unique flora and fauna, its periods of profound contemplation beneath the towering ancient trees. He learned to distinguish its subtle vocalizations, its gestures, its patterns of movement. He saw no aggression, no primal ferocity, only a profound connection to the earth, a serene guardianship of this sacred space. His own existence, once marked by profound grief and a restless search for meaning, found its anchor in this unlikely companionship. The specter of his past tragedy, the loss that had driven him to the solitude of the Alaskan wilderness, began to recede, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. In Tara's presence, Elias found a redemption he hadn't known he sought. He understood now that some mysteries were not meant to be unraveled, dissected, or exploited, but rather to be revered, protected, and allowed to simply exist. Tara was one such mystery, a living enigma, a bridge to a forgotten past, and Elias had become its humble guardian. His camera, once a tool for capturing fleeting images, now served a different purpose. He documented Tara's existence with reverence, each photograph a testament to its majesty, each video clip a silent prayer for its continued safety. He maintained a meticulous journal, not for publication, but as a personal record, a conversation with the future. One frigid evening, sitting by a crackling fire, the aurora borealis dancing overhead, Elias performed a final, symbolic act. He selected a single, hauntingly beautiful photograph, a close-up of Tara's eye, filled with an ancient, knowing intelligence, framed by soft, dark fur, and using a satellite communicator he had meticulously hidden and powered, he encrypted it with an unbreakable code. He then composed a brief anonymous message, hinting at a profound discovery, a glimpse into a world beyond modern understanding, but revealing nothing of its location or true nature. He addressed it to a trusted, anonymous scientific contact he had cultivated over years, someone he knew would understand the gravity of such a hint without succumbing to the immediate urge to exploit. It was a message meant to plant a seed of wonder, a whisper of possibility, without compromising Tara's safety. He knew the contact would spend years, perhaps a lifetime, trying to decipher its meaning, never quite grasping the full truth. And that was precisely the point. As he watched the tiny signal light blink, confirming the transmission, a profound sense of peace settled over him. The cold bite of the Alaskan wind felt less harsh, the vast silence less empty. His heart, once heavy with sorrow, now beat with a quiet contentment. He had found his place, not as a conqueror or an exploiter, but as a protector, a silent witness to a miracle. The world might never fully know of Terra, but Elias knew. And in that knowing, in that shared existence within the hidden valley, he found a belonging, a purpose, and a profound serenity that transcended all understanding. The wild, untamed heart of Alaska had offered him not just solace, but a new life, intertwined with the ancient, magnificent spirit of Terra. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If you were moved by Elias's story and the mystery of Terra, please like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more extraordinary tales. What do you think Elias should do next? Let us know in the comments below.